This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah, our current plan is to have crew members aboard the Eagle.
For riches certainly make themselves wings, they fly away as an eagle toward heaven.
Contact light. Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle.
Although thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
I believe it to be more than a mere coincidence that the Bible uses the word eagle to describe mankind attempting to nest among the stars, and eagle being the name chosen for the craft in which this was attempted by NASA. In the book of Genesis, after the flood had occurred, we find mankind uniting with one goal: to reach into heaven in an attempt to make a name for themselves. Genesis 11 verse 1. And the whole earth was of one language, and of one speech. Back in 1967 the world came together as one to sign the historical space treaty. Nations which are sworn enemies agreed as one upon this treaty.
Despite the prolonged period of intense international crisis, a remarkable event occurred. The United States and the Soviet Union were able to come together and author the Outer Space Treaty, which was intended to become a foundation for all future activity in outer space. The main tenets of the treaty include the prohibition of the placement of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction in space or on a celestial body, the requirement that states are responsible for national space activities, whether carried out by governmental or non-governmental entities, and states that outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, are not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty. Following ratification by the Senate, the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union were among 60 nations to sign the Outer Space Treaty.
Genesis 11 verse 2. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. The word Shinar simply means a country of two rivers. It is the ancient name of the great tract through which the Tigris and Euphrates pass before reaching the sea. The tract known in later times as Chaldea or Babylonia. When we investigate the NASA logo, we find something very odd. These two red lines which meet up. Some believe this to be a serpent's tongue. But it very well could also be two rivers meeting and merging. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. Could this tower be something totally different than we have always imagined it to be? When we look at rockets, we see a towers, and the top of the tower which disconnects reached unto the heavens. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and they confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth.
Test pilots die with almost distressing regularity. And one of the things that deeply worries the astronauts, themselves test pilots by training, is that not too much be made of their dying when it happens.
Very rarely hear anything mentioned about Apollo 1. Apollo 1, initially designated AS-204, was the first manned mission of the United States Apollo program, which had as its ultimate goal a manned lunar landing. The low Earth orbital test of the Apollo Command Service module never made its target launch date of February 21, 1967. A cabin fire during a launch rehearsal test on January 27 at Cape Kennedy Air Force Station Launch Complex 34 killed all 3 crew members. The crew expressed concern about the amount of flammable material, mainly nylon netting and Velcro, in the cabin, which both astronauts and technicians found convenient for holding tools and equipment in place. Though she gave the spacecraft a passing grade, after the meeting they gave him a crew portrait they had posed with heads bowed and hands clasped in prayer. In January 1967, Virgil Gus Grissom, an American astronaut, held an unauthorized press conference in which he told reporters that the United States was at least a decade away from even contemplating a lunar mission. He was severely rebuked for giving that interview without permission. Clearly Mr. Grissom did not fit NASA's requirement of an easily controlled, brain-dead military man. Following this reprimand, Gus Grissom later came out of the water tank reduced gravity simulation of the supposed lunar landing module, and hung a lemon attached to a coat hanger in front of a NASA emblem to indicate to any cameras present, without speaking, what he and his fellow crew members, Roger Chaffee and Edward White, thought of the Apollo program. Just days after Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee were killed in a pre-launch fire, NASA began the arduous process of figuring out just what had happened. If Apollo was going to land a man on the moon by 1970, the agency had to fix the problem and move forward. But as the investigation unfolded, the accident took on a sinister tone with allegations that the crew were responsible for their own deaths. Congress investigated NASA. Many representatives accused the agency of unnecessarily racing to the moon. A consequence of this race, they said, was an unrealistic schedule that saw money thrown at compounding problems without ever getting to the root of the issue. NASA, then, had deliberately and knowingly put the Apollo 1 astronauts in danger. But has mankind really been outside of lower Earth orbit? There is a lot of evidence which suggests that we haven't.
Go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology.
First we have the troposphere. This is where all of our weather occurs, and it is the lowest layer of the Earth's atmosphere. It starts at the Earth's surface and extends up to a height of 4 to 10 miles. Next we have the stratosphere, which extends to about 35 miles above the Earth's surface. This is where our ozone layer resides and protects us from those dangerous UV rays. It is also the layer where aircraft travels, as it is free from weather disturbances. Now we go up to the mesosphere, where most meteors burn up on entry. The mesosphere stretches up to 50 miles above the Earth's surface. Next we have the thermosphere, and this layer extends up to 400 miles from the Earth's surface, and the air here is very thin. Also, temperatures here start to get really hot, ranging anywhere from 200 to 500 degrees Celsius and 500 to 2000 degrees Celsius in the upper region. And last but not least is the exosphere. The temperature in the exosphere can vary from 0 to 1700 degrees Celsius. The exosphere is the outermost layer of the Earth's atmosphere and is around 6,200 miles from the Earth's surface.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
We're also really pushing the boundaries in terms of where we're going forward with exploration. I think humans are naturally driven to do this, and this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit. I certainly plan on being around to see that.
To destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. We only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Once we travel beyond low Earth orbit, the crew will be exposed to larger amounts of radiation. So we have to design both the crew protection systems and our electronic systems to withstand this radiation.
According to NASA, the primary materials used to build the module were aluminium alloy, stainless steel, titanium, nickel steel alloy, heat-resistant glass. Now, if this is the case, we have a very serious discrepancy here. If you remember earlier when I went through the different atmospheres that surround the Earth, both the thermosphere and exosphere have temperatures ranging from 0 to 2000 degrees Celsius. So I decided to examine the melting points of the primary metals that were used to build the lunar module. First off, we have the aluminium alloy, which has a melting point of 463 degrees Celsius. Next we have stainless steel, which has a melting point of 1510 degrees Celsius. Then we also have nickel steel alloy, which melts at 1453 degrees Celsius, and of course the heat resistant glass for the windows, which has a melting point of 760 degrees Celsius. So this would mean that the lunar module, along with its occupants, would have disintegrated well before it even passed through the thermosphere, let alone surviving the Van Allen radiation belts in the exosphere. To protect the astronauts from the Van Allen radiation belts, the lunar module would have required 6 feet of lead shielding. But here's what they really had for protection.
Obviously, the only shielding they had was the literally paper-thin outer hull of aluminum, and their suits consisting of glass fiber, some aluminum fibers, and silicon rubber.
It's very interesting concerning radiation that the astronauts were protected by a thin film of aluminum, when here on Earth they put a lead shield on us when they take a dental x-ray.
NASA admitted that it had lost the original footage of man's first steps on the moon. My next guest, Aaron Rainin, started out believing the official version of history. Tell us why you have changed your mind and now become a skeptic.
I was the first to report, and you played the clip earlier tonight, that all the science data, the telemetry data, was missing. Now, Geraldo, for NASA to come out and say that all the tapes were erased, I mean, it's incredible. Geraldo, this isn't just one tape. This is reams of tape labeled Apollo 11 moon landing. Someone had to physically go and erase it.
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But your own research has shown the telemetry data is missing.
That's right.
Wow. You just put the end to the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon.
Mr. Sabro, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight.
Of course. I don't hit people, but you're going to be on the deck unless you get
I appreciate it.
Well, I hate your stuff and get the out.
Why don't you quote me and say it? The shadows in the wrong place. I don't give a.
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
Have you ever noticed how that all rockets begin launching straight up, only to eventually level off flying sideways instead of continuing up? Could there be a massive graveyard of rockets beneath the surface of the ocean which never made it out of lower Earth orbit? One of two things have occurred. 1. Mankind has never been to the moon. Or 2. We have been to the moon, but the moon is not really as far away as we have been told that it is.